Hey, how you doing? I'm Mike. Welcome to the Sunday Night Chat. In case you haven't been here before, this is just where I basically sum up the week and then talk about whatever the hell else pops in my brain, and I never know what that's going to be. So, you know, strap in for the ride, I guess. Because as of late, I've been upsetting people. It's been kind of crazy. This is not a political channel. I've been talking about stuff that's going on with President Trump and all that, just because what we're seeing and experiencing right now is has never happened before. I mean, yeah, he was here before, but every day, signing orders, taking questions from press every single day, most accessible, most transparent uh, in the history of the country. Period. That's a good thing. If you don't like the guy, you don't like what he's doing, whatever, at least you know what he's doing, what he's thinking, what he's saying. And as I keep saying every week here, stop watching the news. Go to the channels that are showing you live. I mean, it could be recorded earlier, but live from start to finish, no cuts, no edits, no commentary, nobody telling you what to think about what he's telling you, all right, or what you're seeing. Do that. If you're not doing that, then don't comment here because you're not telling me what you think. You're repeating what somebody else told you to think. That crap has to stop. We'll just move on now. So this past week, I was out of town. I'm going to talk about my friend Corinne. It's Karine. Corinne. It's she's living in the French area. She lives in Montreal, and so that's just how that they pronounce stuff there. Matter of fact, she's a teacher, and she told me that her kids refer to her as Madame Corinne. However the hell you say it, my tongue doesn't work that way because I was born in the United States of America. We speak English here. Actually, we speak American. We don't speak the Queen's English, right? So that's a little, you know. Anyhow, the English accent. A lot of people think that makes you sound smart, but a lot of those people are friggin' morons. That's another subject we won't touch on right now. Excuse me. Oh man, don't go anywhere. Just thought of this. I just have to say, I got this in the mail from Jim. He says swap meet, not junk drawer. Jim has been emptying his junk drawers for like a year on me. He also sent me like $75 towards the gas money for this last trip. Thank you, Jim. And Robin and Patrick sent me $100 towards gas money. That was awesome, guys. We're going to get into what the trip cost me because it's crazy. But he says here, you made me keep a Bigfoot magnet to put on his toe gate. Okay. But thanks, Jim. But Jim sent me some stickers here. This is very cool. It's School of Infantry, Camp Pendleton, California. That's definitely going to go on the van. And, Sasquatch sticker. And another one that it looks to me like it's probably reflective. So we'll find a home for that. But I just opened the mail and got that a few minutes ago. Super cool. Thank you, my brother. Back to the trip and Corinne. So I got asked a couple times. Well, for one thing, that's not her in the picture back there. Some guy's like, is that her? Tone down the creepy a little bit for me and everybody else. Just tone down the creepiness. All right, guys? There's a thing here on YouTube creeps me out. Some of the look, I'm a man, right? I like seeing some, you know, I like seeing hot women and everything else, but there's this thing. It's called self-control. I can control myself from typing out comments that are overtly creepy. So let's just throw that away because I got some weird comments on her, and it's fine. But I was asked how we met, and I'll just throw this out there because I know YouTube is a funny thing. If they see a YouTuber with somebody of the opposite sex, they automatically think that there's something going on. Same thing with me hanging out with Sarah and all that. Everybody gets into this thing. Nothing going on. Corinne and I have known each other for over 20 years. Things have gone on. I'm a man, and let's face it, I'm kind of irresistible. Who could blame her? especially when I was young and clean shaven and I didn't have the long hair in the back and all that. I've been getting that comment lately. I liked your hair when it was tighter. Yeah, I could say things about people's physical appearance and things I don't necessarily like, but I refrain because I know, it can make somebody feel bad. So I don't say certain things. At any rate, how did we meet? So back when I bought the new Bonneville in 2003, that's a Triumph Bonneville motorcycle, which is styled to resemble the classic Bonnevilles of the 1960s, 70s, into the 80s, I suppose. And but it was modern. So I picked that thing up, and I think I've told you guys before how this all happened. You get a bike, you get a modern bike, and it's got all kinds of things on it that restrict the flow of air, which makes it run slower. And then, you're looking for modifications. I mean, unless you're on a Hayabusa, right? I met this cowboy, Bruce, in Tombstone. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit when we get there. But he just, I met him in an antique shop, and I told him, I said, you look like you should be for sale here. He just had this outfit on, this old hat. He was all bent up. He was a super nice guy. It turns out he's originally from Southern California, which he doesn't like to tell people in Arizona. And he's a rice burner guy. He's got a Hayabusa, so that was a great conversation. At any rate, I had the Bonneville, and there was a forum for it. It was a lot of English guys, and I was trying to figure out how to make how to jet it right and get the air box out and all these things. And companies were popping up all over the place to provide aftermarket parts and all this. And I had an incident where I went down on the bike. I happened to have a handgun in the jacket when I went down, and it scarred the jacket where you can kind of see the imprint of the pistol on it. And I told the story, and I was getting a bunch of grief from people who don't live in the USA, other countries where you aren't free, where you can't speak your mind or own a firearm or anything, and barely own knives there. And, so they crap all over us for our freedoms. It's really interesting because your opinion on America doesn't matter. And it hasn't mattered since, 1781 or so. You know what I'm saying? So screw you. I don't care what you think. Don't care what you think about America and the way our government is run. Don't care. Anyhow, so I told that story, and then within 24 hours, I got an email from this guy who's, we became friends. We were pretty tight for like 5 years. He's the drummer from this band Poison. He goes by Ricky Rocket, and they started this club. It was called the Gridiron Rebels, and there was 4 guys that were starting it. One guy was in Australia, one guy was in North Carolina, and Ricky and this guy Barney were out here, and I was here in LA, and they said, hey, we're starting this online motorcycle club, and you're the kind of guy we want in the club. So there was only 5 dudes. I was like, sure. And we started doing these rides. Well, they created this online forum for the Gridiron Rebels, and they started accepting members. And I had nothing to do with it. Initially, I tried to speak up about it and what I thought, because there was only a few of us discussing it. And I wasn't in favor of having women in the group and all that stuff. And that's what it became. And Corinne was like the first chick, I think, or one of the first chicks that became part of the club, because she has a Triumph Bonneville and she still has it. And that's how we met. It was a new thing. It was going on for about a year or so. So I kind of knew who she was in the chat, the group chat. I was spending time there at night, but I didn't think anything of her. I didn't know her, didn't know what she looked like, nothing. She seemed cool. That was the one thing. I was like, all right, it's not terrible that she's here. She could take a joke. She's not overly sensitive. I mean, she rides a motorcycle. Most chicks that ride motorcycles are pretty cool. So, at any rate, she had come out here for a family thing, and she borrowed a bike from somebody, and she went on a ride with all of us. That's when I met her. And, that was, I think it was like 2005-ish, something like that. And, I mean, back then, we were all hotter. Anyhow, we got along really well, and that's how our friendship started. And, we got together, and, she's been out here many times, and she visited me when I was in New Jersey before, and all that stuff. We care about each other and all that good stuff. But there's, it's funny with her, not to put too much personal stuff out there, but um, this is kind of like this. You guys know me. I'm into some, I don't know what the term would be, esoteric stuff, I suppose, or out there ideas, concepts. My brain works in a different way. I'm open to different sorts of things, and even though I study on some of these subjects, like the ancient astronaut theory and that sort of thing, it's not like I believe everything I read on all that stuff, but it turns a gear in my head that gets the synapses of my brain going, that allows me the opportunity to where when other things are real in my life in the world, they can, I can see things from different perspectives and angles that I wouldn't be able to see. I'm less susceptible to being brainwashed because my brain has been working on all these different levels with all these different subjects for so long. And I've gone down the rabbit hole on so many things and so many bizarre, which might be bizarre to some people because they haven't investigated these ideas, oftentimes turn out to be true. And they also overlap with so many other things that are going on, including what we're dealing with politics and everything right now. So it's fascinating to me. Life is fascinating. So, um, as usual, I lost my train of thought there. I started going off on the weave. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So yeah, there's a weird thing with her, and we've discussed this, and I feel like people are into past lives and all that, reincarnation, all these things, and the people who are into it, you might not be into it. If you're not into it, look into it. It's interesting. There's at least, I believe, 4 universities in the country where you can study that. You might be able to get a degree in it. I believe it all started at the University of Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. And the guy there back in the 70s made a film called Beyond and Back. But you guys can look up on YouTube. There's a lot of stories about young people when they're very young as children, and they start talking in detail about the life that they had just left. And they know all kinds of things. And sometimes the people are still alive that they interacted with in their last life. And oftentimes they'll get the kids together with these old people and they know everything about them. And it's fascinating stuff. With that in mind, the thing with Corinne, and also people think that we keep running into one another again, like that you keep running into and interacting with the same souls. Basically, we're tied together and we repeat some of these lives and we keep meeting. And it's possible that in one life maybe you were the opposite sex and things like that. And I bring that up because that's how I feel about Corinne, and she knows this. I feel like we were battle buddies or something, as Romans or Greek hoplites or something, because we have that sort of buddy thing. And, Corinne is a bigger woman. You guys have seen the build on her. And I mean, she was a competitive kickboxer, and she's very logical. She's not as emotional as most women are. So, yeah, she's very cerebral. I mean, she's got 3 master's degrees. I've mentioned this before: political science, geography, and education. She was teaching before she had an education degree, but getting the education degree allowed her to move up. She became a vice principal in the public school system for a short period of time in Canada, which is I wish she would go on camera with me, but she's not comfortable with it. If you were to hear her speak about what she thinks about Canada and the education system and their free medical and all that, it's not all it's cracked up to be. So there's somebody here. So I had to block this person from the channel. I don't know. It was a woman, of course, and she was just dumping on me. I mean, paragraphs of just not. She's a Canadian. She hated what I said in the last Sunday night chat where I talked about what Corinne was saying about some of the provinces uh, possibly being for becoming part of the USA. And I asked Corinne where she heard that. And so, because she's interested in Canadian politics, she watches and listens to a lot of debates there on the radio when she's commuting, things like that. And she's still wrapped up in political science in school. She wrote a thesis for her master's degree that was published. So she's published on the problems that Canada was having with immigration at the time. It was like 20 years ago, I believe that was right. And 20 or 30 years ago, maybe. And You know, you talk to her about that now, and it's amazing. She also doesn't think women should be leaders, which is crazy because of the emotional issues. You know, one minute they're fine, and then for several days a month they're like, wah! Yeah, you can't be in that state of mind and be dealing with something that pisses you off because the next thing you know, you nuke a friggin' country. You know what I'm saying? That's the way she puts it, not me. I'm just saying. This is not my words. This is not what I think. This is what an educated, smart woman speaks three languages, everything else. That's what she thinks. All right. At any rate, so there's always been this thing between us that just keeps me from taking it to another level with her, which is a shame because we genuinely care and love one another as human beings. But I just can't get past whatever that thing is. I'm a weirdo, man. You know, and it's interesting. I analyze this. We talk about it openly. You know, because she'll ask me. She kind of knows. She makes fun of me now. She thinks I'm into like. She thinks I'm into blonde midgets with blue eyes. You know, like that's the joke now because she knows I like tinier women. I mean, I'm just funny about it. I like, you know, I forgot to look at the watch. I like, you know, I do like a level of fitness for the most part, but I like kind of like the hard body thing from the 80s where somebody's kind of fit and keeps it together. But I don't mind somebody who's got a little bit of thickness to them as long as they're still pretty tight. You know, I'm not into wide midsections and belly rolls and things like that. That's just not what I'm into. And then there's all kinds of other stuff. I'm just a weirdo. I like nice skin. I like nice hands and feet. I'm just weird about that stuff. And if you're just so big, if I hug a woman and I'm like this, it's just too much for me. It's just a weird thing. I have no control over it. It's just a thing in my brain. I feel like I'm grabbing a dude, you know? So I just like this thing where I can be the man and, you know, do this. That's just my thing. You can judge me for this, but this is not something I'm choosing. It's just the way it is. You understand what I'm saying? And I know women are, one of the things I love about women is that they can, the physical part of things isn't as important to a lot of them. I respect that. I respect that. But I can't get past it myself. It's just a thing. I could, who you are is the most important thing. Your sense of humor, how serious you take yourself, how intelligent you are. You know, if you're not overly rigid with your beliefs, if you can be swayed by logic and facts and things like this, those are all great things. If there's that connection with our eyes and we know that we're attracted to one another, that's always important. And if all those things are there, that can transcend some of the physical, right? It can certainly transcend it for a few hours. Just saying. But for long term, I gotta like what I'm looking at. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm staring at you, I gotta like it. You know, otherwise, if there's something that's gonna turn me off, it's hard. It's a hard thing. You know, of course, if I was standing on the stage right now and I was doing a bit, I would get more graphic. I was thinking about this today. I think I'm gonna leave it alone. Maybe it'll come back later in the video. It's just, you know, it's a little over the top. I'll just do it. Okay. It's just a funny thing, right? You can't not see it. If you're a man and you're with somebody, you're intimate with somebody, and let's say it's your wife. I know there's a lot of married couples here. There's certain positions that you will do where you end up looking at your wife's asshole, right? It's just the way it is. And believe it or not, you would say a butthole's a butthole, that's it. But there are some that are, you can't, it's like there's things going on there sometimes, like some weird growth or some weird thing going on down there. And that's just the thing. It's just going to be like, I can't unsee that. There are actually such a thing as beautiful buttholes. It's a crazy, I had this girlfriend for a while. She was, we did business together and we dated a little bit. And we got it on. She was physically, in my mind, a perfect specimen. There's these people that are like that, just physically everything. She wouldn't think so. She thought she had thick horse teeth or something. I had no problems with it. She happened to be blonde. She happened to have green eyes. I'm a sucker for green eyes. Perfect skin, everything. And just one time we were in bed together, and I was just, checking her out and massaging, and I spent a little bit too much time just staring at her ass. she, I remember she's like, "What are you looking at?" And I couldn't bring myself to say, "You have a beautiful, even your asshole is beautiful." I just couldn't bring myself to say it, but she felt like something creepy was going on. And that was kind of the beginning and the end of that. I couldn't be that honest with her, and if I had been, she probably would have chuckled and everything. Who knows? Maybe she'd have my kid right now because she ended up marrying some dude and having a kid. I'm just saying, there's weird stuff like that. If it jumps out at me, I can't unsee it, and then it's going to be a problem. I'm the one with the problem. I get it. I'm just admitting it. That is the way it is. I don't know how to fix that. Maybe I need to be hypnotized or something. I don't know. But there you have it. What else? I feel like I've talked about everything. I just jumped right into buttholes. Let's just talk about buttholes. The trip was fun with her. She's awesome, by the way. She's a fun person to hang out with and do stuff. Spent all my time with her. Normally when she's here, I have other things I have to do at the same time. But on this trip, I had to take a break. I was just too wrapped up in all this stuff going on here. The trip cost me, over $1,500. Yeah, that's not all gas money. A lot of it was. But that's not gas money from LA to Arizona and from Arizona to LA. We drove around every day. One day we didn't because it was way too windy. But we drove around every day, big loops. We went out to Parker Lake, which is on the border with Mexico for the most part, and then we did all this off-road stuff. We were it was probably like a 6-hour day driving around, man. And the first night, we got there on last Friday, and not this couple days ago, but the Friday before, and it was a hell of a drive, And Saturday night, we had been invited to a dinner party. My buddy Andrew, who I made the walnut pedestal table for, he's an attorney, and he had a buddy staying with him who he went to law school with, who's also an attorney. And then Andrew's got a new girlfriend. She's pretty funny. She's pretty cool. And then there were other people that came and went. He had a neighbor, Sam, whose wife and kids were out of town, and him and his wife were both in the Army, and they're stationed at Fort Huachuca. So that was cool talking to him. Interesting thing, where the house is in Arizona, it's in Huachuca City, and I think it's the newest development. So the houses there, they were built in 2000, so they're 25 years old. And if you're on the 90 and you're heading towards Huachuca City and into Sierra Vista, where we're at, it's on the left side. And it's this little community. And then I'm 1 block away from the last street. And then those houses, their backyards have a fence line. And that fence line blocks off another piece of land that is separated by 90 from Fort Huachuca, but it's still part of Fort Huachuca. And it's aggravating to me that we're not able to access it because pretty much a straight line from my house to Tombstone is right there. But I've got to drive. I got to go out to the 90 and I got to go north or south to go to one of the other major roads to then go to Tombstone. And I just keep thinking, man, if I had a dirt bike or something, I can get on these dirt roads and go right to Tombstone. It'd be a lot shorter. It'd be fun. And I was finally able to talk to somebody who knows something about it. And he says, well, it used to be, there's possibly munitions out there, and it used to be like a live fire thing, and so they don't want people out there because things can happen. But also there's operations that get run in there. And I asked him, I said, can I run into like some tier 1 guys? He said, yeah, absolutely. They're out there. So I don't want to run into those guys. So I've been thinking about going out there at night just for the hell of it. But then I realized that's probably not a good idea. I don't want to run into those guys in the middle of the night. Freak them out, freak me out. I'm not supposed to be there. Not a good thing. So it was good to talk to him about that. Andrew's girlfriend's super cool. She's more on the left of things, which is fine. She was super cool with us because everybody else there was more on center right. But there was a subject that came up later about the Middle Eastern guys, having sex with goats, man. she never heard it before, so she got very defensive. And she's such a sweet person. She's coming from a good place. She was trying to come up with excuses of why they would be doing it. She just couldn't accept that it was because of the religion, right? Because, you know, according to the Quran and everything else, it's you can't have sex with any woman other than your wife. And so she she was so funny. I mean, at some point I got a little frustrated. I was like, men are men. They're going to stick it in something. That's just how it is. So they're sticking it in young boys and goats. That's what they're doing. And she could not accept it. And eventually everybody else has explained to her, no, this is real. So that was a little tease. I got to call Andrew. I'm talking to him. I got to ask her, is everything cool? She was such a sweetheart. But that was an intense little conversation. That was kind of funny. Wild. And this is the issue with people from that other side. It's they're not necessarily misinformed on everything. It's just that they don't hear the full truth on most things simply because that side is keeping that from them because they don't want their listeners, followers to know about it. Because they, for whatever reason, they think it makes the whole group look bad or whatever. But you got to just tell the truth about everything. This is why that when they come at you, they hit you with some things that touch on truth, but it's not nuanced. It doesn't have all the information in there. And they run into somebody like me, and I'm like, wait a second, there's this, this, and that. What do you think of that? And they never heard that before. So they think I'm lying. They think it's like, oh, you're living in this Fox News life bubble. It's like, no, that's just reality. You don't know about it, so look into it. But you're not going to look into it because you're not going to look at anything that goes against your programming because it makes your friggin' head hurt. It's a problem, man. It's a problem. It's. I hope there's going to be this awakening, but I don't really see it coming because these. It's going to have to. Keep in mind, what are we in this now? 40 something days. I don't think we're 50 days. I don't think we're 2 months into it yet, and so much has happened already at breakneck speed, you just can't keep up. And while I support this, and I believe we needed a sea change, we needed a shot in the arm, we needed to stir things up. That doesn't mean I think that every single thing that's happening is going to automatically be the best thing ever. I think there's going to be some problems. But they're going to rectify things. You got to give it a little bit of time. The problem with a 24-hour news cycle is, and even I have to be careful with this, is like you hear something that you're jazzed about, and maybe you talk about it. The next day, you turn out it's not true, or it's not exactly true, or it's true if this, you know. And so that's what the other side is getting. What they're getting is, the sky is falling and every single thing that Trump is doing is going to cause problems. And they're talking about all these problems that could happen if things go exactly the way they're framing it based on something that they took, that Trump actually said, but they took it out of context usually. Here's what he said. This is what is going to happen now. And then that whole side is freaking out over it. Meanwhile, things keep going on. Oh, it turns out he didn't have to do that. Or he said that for a specific reason that he knew was going to lead to this, so he could get a deal with that. So all this stuff that went out there into the world that has everybody emotionally upset was a waste of time because none of that's going to happen now. Right? So slow it down. Stop watching it. Stop. Again, like I keep telling you, watch the live stuff. The Forbes channel is pretty good. Start to finish, whatever. Formulate your own opinion. Stop allowing yourself, because I'm having a problem with this now. I'm having a problem in the comments here sometimes. I'm having problems when I talk to people out in the real world, and I'm just reminding them, just relax, man. Relax. Everything's going to be fine. Oh, the stock market's down. Oh, the stock market's up. Oh, this has happened. Relax. Let things settle. All the stuff is being implemented right this second. We're not going to know how things are going to shake out. Everything is happening right now. We're still dealing with the Biden economy and everything else. Energy costs are going to start coming down pretty soon here, and everything's going to start getting better, I believe, for the most part. So I'm hopeful, and I'm excited about it. I have this woman that I like. She's from New York, but she's a lefty. And I posted something. I was accused of reposting Putin talking points. I went and read it again. Historically, everything in there is accurate. There was one part where they say Zelensky has property in Florida or something, but they didn't say he did. The way it was worded is like it's been reported that he did. And people are latching on to that like, wow, that's fine. It's not a big part of the rest of it. It's always, that's a problem with copying and pasting, because there could be something in there that is not accurate, and then that's the one thing that the other side will latch onto to then crap all over all of it. So what are you going to do? But she was kind of coming at me, and her perspective is like, well, you're just on that side, so you're going to believe all that stuff. And my response to that is, well, that's what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing. But, she had said, it's always funny when people do this. I am the great granddaughter or the granddaughter of, Hungarian people that were, persecuted by the Soviets. And, okay. Russia today and Putin today has nothing to do with the Soviets. You know what I'm saying? Like, as far as, World War II, the totally different world now. It's not the same thing. But the thing is, and I'll put a link in the description below if I remember. You guys can remind me in the comments if I forget to do that. During the fall of the Soviet Union, when the Berlin Wall fell, there was an agreement made. I don't know if NATO was working this deal, but I know we had a part in it, and the European nations had a part in it, with what was going to become Russia at the time, where the Western Bloc countries, which included Ukraine and Belarus and some others, could become their own countries. But there was a caveat and a deal made where they couldn't join NATO. And if at any time Russia saw fit to take them over again, I think it was worded like if they couldn't take care of themselves financially on their own or something. I don't have all the details in my brain, but basically they could retake those countries. So there was a lot of crazy stuff going on there. And when you look at what happened, the guy that was running, I forget his name, before Zelensky, there was a lot of corruption. But Zelensky getting in there didn't stop the corruption in that government. In my opinion, it got worse. And the point I tried to make with her, through my own personal experiences and with people I know, I've been around, been to some places, and I got friends who've done some things. I personally know a guy that assassinated a South American leader in the late 70s. I got another friend of mine who recently publicly came out, and he tried to get me in his unit in 2007 doing the provisional reconstruction teams in Afghanistan. He was working with the CIA. He was working with USAID people and the funds. And when all this was dropping, he came out publicly just to set the record straight of talk about how corrupt and inept in some ways the USAID and the CIA is, and like what he had to deal with on that. So I know what I'm talking about. And I grew up with these stories. Evil exists. Corruption exists. You ever hear the Gulf of Tonkin incident? I mean, our people have been dabbling and intervening in elections using USAID funds for propaganda to overthrow governments and put people in that would be friendly to us and our businesses to help people in our country make a lot of friggin' money. That's been going on forever, and that's what's going on in Ukraine. Period. That's what's going on. Period. The way that the left is framing this, like it's just these people and they're innocent. There's no. There's a lot of crazy nonsense going on. I want to show you guys something here. Excuse me, I should have had it out. Let's get this book down. I haven't had time to read this, but when the USAID thing was happening, I saw an interview. I think it was a 60 Minutes interview in the early 80s, and it was the guy that wrote this book, John Stockwell. It's called In Search of Enemies, a CIA story. And this guy had been a Marine. And in the clip, he calls it AID. But that's what it is. It's USAID. And in this book, he talks about the CIA and the USAID and how they funded all these missions and all kinds of other underhanded operations in search of enemies. That's what they do. They went around the world looking for situations where they can find a legitimate reason for the U.S. to get involved, which was really about companies making money, the military-industrial complex, all of it. This is just a drop in the bucket. Shit's been happening forever. So it's nothing new. It's just being exposed to the masses in a way that has never been exposed before. Right? The deep state thing is real. It's real. So, I mean, right now they're fighting. You got people in the FBI that don't want these files on the Epstein files to come out still. You know, even with the JFK stuff, you have people fighting that are unelected people that have had jobs that are now, that's part of the reason why they're being fired. Also, I feel like I got to explain this to people. It's crazy. This thing with government employees having to answer an email telling what they did the last week, 5 things that they've done. That's not about like proving your worth. A small percentage of that is. The bigger thing is finding out who's real, because there's people on payrolls. This is part of the scam. There's non-existent human beings getting checks. Same thing with the Social Security stuff and everything else. They are cleaning this up. They're cutting through the bullshit, and it's going to save us trillions of dollars, right? And I've said this before. We could be in a position where they find so much waste and fraud that they stop and we cut back on government. We don't need most of these government jobs. It's just a fact. We don't need them. It's wasteful. Even the jobs that exist, we don't need a lot of them. It's crazy. All these government departments, in case you don't know how this works, any government agency, department, whatever it is allocated X amount of money every year. If you don't spend every dime of that, you think that you risk not getting the same amount or more next year. So towards the end of every year, they're spending frivolously on all kinds of things so they can come back the next year with the budget and go, we spent every dollar of that. Turns out we need another $30 million or whatever the hell they want. And somebody in the government office just goes, okay, and they sign it, and they sign it, and they sign it. And a lot of these agencies, a lot of these organizations, whatever it is, are run by corrupt politicians or their friends or family members. It's oftentimes somebody they're married to, their own wife. It's insane. And they all get money out of this. That's, we spend X amount of money on businesses and whatnot in different countries. The people that set those deals up get all these kickbacks, and it comes back to them in ways that is not necessarily easily traceable until now. So that's why they're scrambling and fighting so much. I mean, did you watch the State of the Union speech? If you haven't, I recommend that you watch it. I believe they had over a 75% approval rating overall. Even CNN's numbers were over 50% approval on that. Because he's saying things you can't argue against. You can't argue against any of it. Everything he's saying would be good for Americans. And the left is sitting there. And he said it in the speech. He's like, it doesn't matter what I say. I can invent a cure for the worst disease possible. They'll pretend they're not happy about it. It's just silly, childish, and everything else. But that's because they have to. They have to double down on all the lies and the bullshit that they've been part of, or else they're going to prison. They're going to go to prison anyhow, some of them. They have to. I know some of you don't believe it's going to happen. I believe it will happen. I didn't believe it was going to happen for a long time. You know why? Because I never believed all the stuff that's happening right now, every day, was ever going to happen. I'd given up on it. I gave up on all of it. I threw my arms up in the air after the 2020 election. I was like, it's over, man. If they're going to be able to pull that, that's crazy. So this last one, it's a big deal now. And I don't care. I don't care if there's Republicans involved. Whoever was corrupt, ripping you off, taking our taxpayer money, a lot of what they've done has resulted in the death of human beings worldwide. Millions of people murdered, killed in wars that never needed to happen just because certain people wanted to line their pockets. That's horrible. It's freaking criminal, man. So let's get to the bottom of all of it. This thing where they're trying to, Elon steals with these little signs. What's he stealing? Prove that he's stealing anything. He's the richest guy in the world. I think that's true. I think that's an accurate statement. If it's not, he's pretty damn close to the richest guy on the planet. There's nothing he needs. He doesn't need any more money. That guy can basically fart into the wind around the right amount of people, the certain kind of people that would create some sort of reaction where somebody goes achoo, and then that turns into somebody doing this, and that starts a conversation that leads to something where $2 million ends up in his pocket. Like that's like, you understand, like there's so much going on at any given time. Everything's in flux where he could basically just, it's like there was a movie like that, right? There's a, like you touch something and there's a time thing and it affects everything else. That's where Elon is. Elon has so much money. He's invested in so many different things that any little thing he can do or say, or person he could touch physically or whatever, can lead to him making $1 million overnight in a way that he would never even see possible because he doesn't have any control over that sort of thing. So give that up. We're going after him. It doesn't matter. All right, he's doing it because he cares. And all he's doing is applying the same business model that he's applied to every other business he's taken over and turned into a profit-making venture. When he bought Twitter, everybody thought it was ridiculous because of the amount of money that he spent. But he went in there, he cleaned house. Now there's actual free speech. Him creating X from Twitter was one of the major steps in saving this country. But not just saving the country, the world. Because you didn't have a bunch of crazy people moderating speech. And the crazy thing is when they were moderating speech, you could still have pedophiles on there. You could still have ISIS on there, cutting off heads and everything else. But you couldn't have you couldn't have conservative values at that time. It was insane. Insane. So now it's all turned around. Would you rather I was talking about assholes again? I don't know what my asshole looks like. I hope it's pretty good looking. I really don't know. Women, you don't typically have to look at your man's asshole. We got to look at it. You know what I'm saying? We have to see it. So take care of that. I laugh at the things I say because I know how ridiculous it sounds. Anyhow, I just had to get all that off my chest because I just feel like people aren't understanding what the hell's going on right now. In the end, I believe it's going to be a net positive. But again, I don't think everything is going to be positive. Some of it's going to be a little rough. And things are probably going to get rougher before they get better. I'll tell you this, if Trump wasn't president right now, things would be way worse off. Way worse. All the prices, everything, energy, everything would be worse. And we'd be going into World War III. Because that's what those people want. They're sick in the head, evil people. I don't know what's going on with that. I have a theory. Which goes into the whole soul thing. And yeah, I guess it touches on reincarnation to a certain extent. But I wonder about it sometimes. I've talked about my death experience where I left my body and I was given a choice. I was told I could go home now. And I said, well, life's been interesting lately. Maybe I should stick around a little while longer. And I went right back into my body, and here I am. And I've been a better human being since then. This is my 50th birthday that happened on. So the last 8 years of my life have been my best 8 years, man. As far as like my outlook on life and how I see things and how I process things, how I process information. And I don't flip out. And I'm not angry and all those things that I used to be. Unhappy, depressed. I don't have that anymore. It's gone. But I wonder about people. Like I know that my intellect is working on a certain level, and I meet a lot of people that aren't like that. And then when you look at people in the Middle East, I made this analogy the other day. There's a great movie called The Man Who Would Be King. Michael Caine, Sean Connery. Watch that movie. It's a great flick. It's very entertaining, but I want you to watch it because they shot it on location in the Middle East, and you can see what's going on with these people. I'm not judging these people. I'm not trying to say they're all like this, okay? But because of the religion there's a lot of kooky stuff going on. In a lot of these areas, there's a lot of inbreeding going on. People are having sex with their cousins and their sisters and all kinds of stuff, and they have kids, and so that does a thing. It's not all of them. I'm not saying that's everybody there, but I'm saying that absolutely happens. 100% happens. And if you've talked to people, like I have, who've been over there, who have to try to train these guys, it's an uphill battle, man. Left and right, drill, getting them to use stuff. It's motor skills. there's something going on. I mean, you can't be in your right mind to have sex with a goat. You know what I'm saying? Like something's off there anyhow. Or to be raping little boys and things like that. That's not cool. And that goes on. That 100%, I just use that word. You're not supposed to use the R word in these videos, I guess, because people block that out because it gets flagged and then whatever. But that happens. It happens. I'm not saying everybody does it, but it absolutely happens. We have some of our guys went to prison because they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle what was going on over there, and so they took action themselves and took some of these guys out. Uh, I would have done the same thing. Just saying. At any rate, if you watch The Man Who Would Be King, you'll see these guys traveling and creating these armies as they go, and they're trying to train them. And what you see them dealing with is exactly what our guys are dealing with now. What this gets me to is another thing. I watched this sci-fi movie. It's called Life Force. It's from the 80s. Check out Life Force. Interesting. I think the effects still hold up. Basically, it's a British movie, I believe. It all takes place in Britain. Well, in space. It was a futuristic film at the time. And what it is there's a comet coming pretty close to Earth. And we send a ship up there. And the ship goes into the comet. And in the comet, which is all these broken pieces of ice and everything else, they find this spaceship, which is pretty kooky looking. It's really cool. And they go into it. When they go in there, they find these humanoid bat-type creatures that have wings that are all like burnt and they're all floating. If you touch it, it just turns to dust. Then they find these 3 coffins, basically, that have these crystal glass tops where you can see the people. 2 men and a woman, they're naked. And the chick in it, she's in the whole movie and she's naked and she's gorgeous. And so if you like looking at naked women, the movie's worth it just for that. Matilda May, I think was her name. That's how much I can't forget it. It's just like, whoa, wow, this is great. This is a great movie. What a great movie. Boy, this is a great movie. Holy cow, this is a good movie. Whew, man, good looking. So, at any rate, what ends up happening, I don't want to ruin the movie for you, but the thrust of it is they're vampires, but they're soul-sucking vampires. And the ship ends up over the Earth, and these beings are taken out of us. They turn us into zombies in a way because they suck our soul. Then those zombies go out and suck out the next soul of somebody else instead of it being blood like a vampire. Very similar to a vampire movie. It's very vampire movie-esque. But you see the souls being sucked out of the Earth as they're being killed by these creatures, and they're going in to power the ship. That concept freaks me out, man, because you can imagine that the human soul would, because the human soul never dies, right? There's this whole theory on this of we never really die because you can't, like, once something's created, it's there forever as far as the energy thing and all this. But then when you look at some of the people on the planet and you see what they are and you try to engage with them and talk to them and you realize that they're not on the same level, I sometimes think, I'm not saying this is happening, I'm saying this is a thought that I have in my brain. I sometimes think that we keep exponentially growing on the planet, like humans are populating the planet, and we keep coming up with ways to kill us in big groups through war or disease, the pandemic, for instance, things like that. And our government does things, not just the U.S. government, but all governments, going all the way back, right? People running things, create situations that are going to kill off mass numbers of human beings, which gets me to the thought process of what if there's a huge percentage of humans on a planet that are just really cattle? Because if you talk to people who've, again, this is the alien thing now. People have been abducted. People have communicated with these beings. If you get into Dr. Alan Greer and some of these other people who apparently communicate with these beings from other worlds, and I know a lot of you don't believe in any of this, and it's fine, but just go along with it so you understand this concept. Aliens consider us vessels for the soul. What I'm getting at is what if there's a huge portion of the planet that is set up to house a soul so that human can be killed, so that soul can be sucked up to be used for some sort of energy, for something else we can't understand. That's frightening to me, because that would mean that there are people here that they'll have this life and that's it, because they're just here to house that soul for a certain amount of time because somebody else needs that soul to power something else up or whatever. I don't know where that goes, but it's a concept that I don't like having in my brain. And it had never been but there before until I saw that flick. It frightens the hell out of me, man. That one thing is spooky. Yeah, that's pretty deep stuff. It's kind of out there. Let's talk about weird assholes again. I think that's a much better subject. Click. Click. This guy. I'm done with this guy. Let's unsubscribe from this guy. First time here? How do you like this one? Also, yesterday I did a video. I'll publish a short here in a minute when I'm done with this. I was working on the grounds on the front of the van yesterday for the headlights. It turns out both the headlights were bad. I took them out. I should have brought one up here. Did I bring one up here? Hang on a second. If I did, it'd be right behind you. Nope. Okay. So there's like this stem in the headlight. I put LEDs in. And they're really cool. They're aluminum, and there's a stem, and there's an LED light on each side of it. And there's a fan in there that keeps it cool. And one LED on one side on each of the headlights was out. So I had bought new headlights, the LED replacements, and I put them in, and it's perfect now. And that's all it was the whole time. I first went down there this morning. What a fiasco. I learned something from the comments in that video, yesterday's video. It wasn't supposed to be that long. You know me, I can be a little long-winded. That's why I like this format. Nobody can cut me off. I can eventually get to the point. I showed how this wall that the sheet metal of the van is painted white, and there's a screw that goes in there, and there's this connector on the end of the wire, and that's it. And normally, if you're trying to ground something, you wouldn't have any paint there. So my thinking was I'll put a copper wire around the bolt that goes into the threads, and maybe that'll help ground it better. But somebody in the comments said, well, the way that works is if you look at that loop that the screw goes through, there's little tits on there, little nubs, where if you screw it tight enough, they're supposed to cut through the paint, and that's what grounds it. He says, yours look corroded. So I thought about that, and that made perfect sense. Thank you for whoever left that comment. I went down there this morning with a brush, cleaned it off really, really well, and put it back together, and it didn't change the brightness of the bulb. And I was like, well, screw it. Let me pull this bulb out and eyeball it, and there you go. That one side was out. So I replaced that bulb. That was the driver's side. Passenger side, I had to I had to remove the whole, there's an overflow tank and a windshield wiper tank, and they're attached. You got to pull that out. One of the tabs that attaches to boy, I wish I knew the name of it, and I do. I just can't recall it. But, there's a piece of sheet metal on the front of your car that your headlights are bolted to, your radiator's bolted to the other side of it. I'm going to call it a bulkhead, but that bulkhead there's these two plastic tabs that are attached to this plastic container there's these inserts that hold it in place. One of them had busted free of the washer fluid side. So I put two self-tappers in that. That's going to be way stronger than the way it was designed. So I did an upgrade there. Getting that bulb out I turned it. It turns out I must have turned it all the way, and it just wouldn't turn anymore, obviously, and I couldn't get it out of there. It took me like 20 minutes or more, like fiddling with this. I put grip tape on it. I tried a pair of pliers. Eventually, I just pulled right out. I was like, son of a bitch. That side, for some reason, I believe it turns the opposite direction than the other side. And I didn't remember that. If I had watched my video when I put the bulbs in the first time, maybe I would have discovered that. It was a fiasco, but solved the problem. Plugged a new light, took it out. Sure enough, one of the LEDs was out. So I replaced both of them. Now they're working. Everything's fine. No problems. No more ground issues. Everything's golden. Solved. Problem solved. All right. I think that's about it. As soon as I'm done with this, there's going to be 10 things I wish I would have spoke about. Because there's a lot going on in my brain other than beautiful assholes versus ones that have weird stuff going on that I don't ever want to look at. And the problem with bringing up that subject is now all the bad ones I've ever seen in my life are flashing. But I'm going to have nightmares tonight. I'm going to have nightmares tonight. It's not your fault. It's my fault because I'm a weirdo. Assholes coming to eat me or something. This is going to be horrible. Ooh, it's not going to be good. I gotta, we gotta stop talking now. I gotta watch a movie or something. I gotta get these buttholes out of my mind. Some guy I don't like will probably call me later, and I'll start thinking asshole again. There's it's gonna be a whole thing. That's it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging on. This was a tough one to get through, I think. Actually, I'm not done talking. I just want to say, because I didn't finish with the trip. It was a good trip. I did think about telling you guys about all the things that happened, but one of the good things that happened, I know somebody's going to ask, I did get the storage unit for my sister. I saw my sister one morning while I was there. I took her and my niece out for breakfast, and we had a lot of fun. So a couple women sat in the booth behind us, and I looked at the woman when she sat down, and there was something about her, and so I started making the sounds to make my niece laugh, and we're talking about farting and everything, and those women eventually got up and moved to another place, and my sister's like, Michael, what are you doing? You're making people move. I said, I feel good about that. That's why I did it. And sure enough, some other people joined them, and they were really annoying and loud over on the other part of the restaurant now. So if you want to make somebody move away from you in a restaurant, just start making fart noises. Excuse me. Whoops, I'm sorry. Oh, I might have to check my underwear on that one. Do stuff like that, and people will move away from you in a restaurant. It's like it worked. It works. It worked for me. So that was good. And after that, we went to a storage place that she wanted to use, but they were full. Then there was another place really close to her, walking distance. You walk right there, but the cops were there. This was Sierra Vista. Cops all over the place, weapons out. They had guys, military from the base there. I walk up to go to the storage place. I'm ignoring what's going on. I don't care. What the hell? I want to do some business here. Cop stops. He goes, where are you going, sir? So I want to go. He goes, you can't go over there. You can't be here. I don't even want to be here right now. We have a guy with a rifle in the window here across the street. He's like, just get out of here. It's like, okay. So I walked away. I told her what was going on. She got back to me. She said that business was closed. Called the other storage unit place. I talked to that guy on Saturday morning, last Saturday, and they had one 10 by 10 unit left. It's $81 a month. I bought it. So gave them her name. They have a key for her and everything else. I have not yet spoken with her about that, other than she knows it's there. I gave her all the information. I don't know if she's gone over and started putting stuff in the storage unit. But at least that's happening. She was super cool on this trip. No issues whatsoever. Very happy. I love my sister, especially when we get along. She's awesome. She's funny and she can be very cool. It's just when she's not, it's like, what? Some of us can be that way. I just want to throw that out there because I know some of you follow along the whole storyline here. I know you were curious. I took down at the house, there were blinds that were broken, these vertical blinds, and it was just horrendous. And there was, I put sheets up over. It was very dark like a cave. I ripped all that down on this trip, and I spent a good amount of money buying curtains and curtain rods. And they're blackout curtains. So I put them up, and they block everything out. Keeps the place looking pretty safe from the outside. Looks much prettier now from the outside when you look at the windows. And when you open them up, now the house fills with light. It's awesome. I can't believe it took me so long to do that. My sister had gotten a lot of stuff out of the living room this time when I got there. So I was able to use the living room and sit in there with Corinne and bullshit and have the computer set up there. And that was a wonderful thing to be able to do. So hopefully she'll get that stuff out of there now before I come back next time. And I'm more motivated now to start working on that house. I have another friend that I went to high school with who's awesome. I love this chick. Peggy. I know she listens to she'll be listening to this tomorrow morning on her way to work. Peggy Jean, who was a fox, stone cold fox, man. She was a cheerleader in high school and all that. And more conservative minded. She's a history teacher in a very, most of the schools are all pretty lefty in New Jersey. She's in New Jersey, and boy, the stories that she used to tell me about dealing with the administration there in the school and what you can and can't say and everything else. I've been telling her for years, write it down. Write that story down. Write that interaction down and just do a collection of short stories. And then later, when you eventually retire, and she could do it now, she could write a book and just put it under a pseudonym. She doesn't have to use a real name. Peg, are you listening to this? I'm talking about you, baby. Write the friggin' book. Because I know dozens, that's not an exaggeration. Dozens would be at least 2 dozen, which would be at least 24 people. And I probably know more personally than 24 people that are teachers. And a lot of them were people I went to school with personally, but then other people, teachers I actually knew that were my teachers. And other people I knew outside of people I went to my high school with that are teachers. And guys I worked with that became teachers later or went back to teaching. And I would talk to them about what was going on. And we would get these this is a long time ago, man. This is decades, all these years. We talk about what all the nonsense coming out. This was not a political thing for me, left versus right at the time. It was just, what is going on in schools, man? Why are you guys doing this? Why do you put up with this? And they're like, hey, man, I want my pension. That's what everybody said. I want my pension. Can't make waves. It's hard to fire a shitty teacher. Like if they were known for being a shitty teacher, it's hard to fire them. But an administration could get rid of a good teacher if that person doesn't toe the line. If a school system, an administration that's set up where it's just lefty loony nonsense, if you're overly conservative and you try to fight them, they will work on getting rid of you. It's a problem. That's what's been happening in the education system, and everybody knows it. The people in the system know it, and they admit it. At least my friends did. And my whole thing with them is, why don't you talk about it? Why don't you put that out there? Why don't you write an article for the paper? Why don't you write a book? Nobody does it because they're afraid. First, they want tenure. They get the tenure. Then they want to stick it out for 20 years or more because they want their pension. Then they're nervous about holding on to the pension. So do it under another name. It's very simple. You guys are supposed to be smart. You're the teachers. You haven't figured this shit out yet? So I wish that would happen, because that's the only way to change things, is for people to put the truth out there about what they're dealing with. And that goes hand in hand with 20 years ago or so, it was probably about 20 years ago, a lot of women in particular, it was all women, that I knew, still know, a lot of them went through divorces. It was probably all their fault. No, I'm just kidding. They got divorced and they went back to school. Some of them are listening to me right now, so I'm not going to mention names or whatnot. Many of them, I say many, I want to be accurate. Let's just say it was maybe half a dozen. That sounds about right. And for sure, 3 or 4 of them absolutely were very adamant about this, where they were grown women, right? Late 30s, going back to school to get degrees or add on to the degree that they already had, get a higher degree, whatever it was, so that they can make a living now that they're single, right? Make more money now that they're single. A lot of these women, when they were married, weren't working. So, they were doing this. And they would tell me these stories about in college. This gave me an idea back then. This is good that I brought this up. I guess it's going to be a longer video than I thought. Sorry for those of you that can't take it. They would say, hey, we got these professors. It's just crazy. Like, I don't agree with anything. They're 100% wrong. I know they're wrong. You know they're wrong. And I say, why don't you stand up in class and be the example? And they say, well, I don't want it to hurt my grade. They're women. No offense, ladies. Most of you are not as confrontational as us men are. We're not afraid of the confrontation, right? You're not afraid of it when it's your own spouse or people in your family or whatever, but when there's other people around, you usually think about how you're viewed. I don't give a shit. When I went to college, I was 23 years old. I don't want to get into that whole story. I've told it before. So I was already a man. I've been living alone since I was 14. Son of an immigrant, right? In and out of the Corps already. Been working since I was a kid. Blue collar, patriotic, red-blooded American, and I'm in class with kids that just got out of high school, and they're just sponges soaking all this shit in. They're not mature enough to stand up and counter, like put up an argument against the professor. They're scared. They're not that interested in it. They just want to do the work and get out of there and party and get their degree or whatever it is. I was in there trying to really get something out of it. I argued with all my well, when you could. I mean, you're not going to argue in a biology class. There's nothing to argue about. Well, today I suppose there is. I'm sorry, but a man and a woman, I don't agree with that. There's 37 genders, and yeah, yeah. If I was in college right now, would not they would kick me off campus. I'd be like, this is bullshit. This is bull. But my psychology professor and my philosophy professor, those, and I had multiples of them because I took multiple classes in that. And both of those classes, the professors I had would say things in class all the time. I'd be like, I'm sorry, everything you just said is based on my personal experience is nonsense. And here's why. And it made the class better. And I still got A's and B's. I had like a 3.4 average at the time. That's what I graduated with, actually. So, when you go right from high school into college, you just don't have the maturity or the confidence, generally speaking, to stand up to your professors if something is going against the grain, and you just suck it up. And then, so the universities for many decades now have just been they've been factories producing stupid people. Like, they've been pumping a lot of bad ideas into their minds, and those people come out and start spreading this nonsense, thinking it's the right way to be, and it's just not. So that's what's been happening. And, there's going to be a sea change with all this. Now, I like what Trump is doing. He's cutting funds to colleges that are supporting nonsense. So good, good. A lot of these colleges, through their endowment programs, like money that former graduates put into it, they got millions or more in there. A lot of them don't need subsidies from the government. So you could, as long as you're balanced, if you have enough, like they've done the work on this. I think it's like less than 10% of college professors or teachers across the spectrum are like conservative minded. Everybody else is lefty. They all vote for the Democrats. That's where their mind is at. That's not fair. What are you doing to the kids? Of course, the Democrats think they're right about everything. That's the crazy thing. They're not wrong about everything, but you need a balance. It's like it's better to have a man and a woman in a household raising a child. I don't think you can argue against that. You need a balance. You need equal. If you have an equal number of these people that have these different mindsets, you're going to have a better outcome. There's going to be a better result with the people that are going through the system and graduating, because they're going to have both things going on. You have one teacher that thinks this, the next guy, you go in the next class, doesn't agree with that other teacher at all and puts his view out there. Well, now at least students are like, oh, I heard two different perspectives from adults that I respect. I'm supposed to respect them. They're my teachers. And they don't just hear one thing. This is the problem with what's going on with media. People listen to one side all the time. They're not taking the time to listen to the counter arguments. If you disagree with the stuff I say and you never take the time to listen to the counter argument, then I don't care what you have to say, because everything, you're just coming at me from one side. I listen to the other side. I know. I know what you think. I get it. So anyway, I'll just leave you with that now. I guess that had to be said. There was something I wanted to say about, yeah. When these girlfriends of mine were back in college and as adults complaining about these professors, it made me come up with this idea. And I've done videos on this back in the day. But I'm going to bring up this idea again, because it came up around 2015-ish when I met Sabo. So we're talking, it's 20 years ago. And this is all about that same time, if I'm right about this. Because Sabo would bring me out to dinner, to these conservative dinners, and they were nice people, but to me they were no different than the left in so much as the way that they interacted with themselves. They were in their own bubble. And you'd walk around this dinner party at a bar or something, you'd go into these little groups of people and they'd be having a conversation, but they're all saying what they know already. And I'd walk in and go, hey, hey, listen, I'd cut them off. I'd say, hey, what you're saying, you know this, I know this, we all know this. You're just cackling, repeating the same shit. Why don't you talk about how you get the other side to understand what you're saying, like to see things the way you see it? That's a better conversation, and work on that. And then the next thing was, which came from these people that were going back to school, was because a lot of these people were wealthy. And so I'd say, you guys, why don't you put like stipends together, like grants and whatnot, where you imagine you're my age. Imagine me, 58 years old. What if I wanted to go back to school? Well, I didn't set my life up properly, right? So I don't have a retirement coming or anything else. I basically have to work till the afternoon of my funeral. That's basically what's going on here. And I would love to go back to college. It would be great. What would I go back for? I would go back to college for, I'd study some philosophy again, probably, but I would do anthropology, geography, things like this, and maybe some political science. I'm into finding out more about our past and the truth of human existence on the planet, because we know now we weren't really told the truth. They're finding new discoveries all the time. And that's interesting to me. That would mean I'd be taking a lot of classes that are taught by left-leaning people. If you were going to go to college to be in media, you'd be taking a lot of communications classes, right? You'd be taking theater classes and all. It's just all where the liberals are. I know because I did a liberal arts degree, and that's why I heard all this nonsense when I was in there at 23. I wasn't political at the time, but I was listening to people say things. I was like, that's crazy, dude. Where do you get that idea? I couldn't believe the things I heard back then. But I didn't see the big grand scheme of the plan of how they were brainwashing everybody. I see the result of it now, decades later. So it would be really cool if the wealthy people who say that they want change, if you could get into a program, if they said, hey, here's the deal. You get your college paid for and you get a stipend, every month to survive. So you could pay your rent and eat and live and everything else to go to college, maybe certain degrees. Maybe it's a history degree. Maybe you're gonna be a teacher. Maybe the deal is you have to teach for at least 5 years or something to help spin things around. And the idea would be you're also there to be a disruptor on purpose. So where you stand up in class and everything's recorded today. You've got your phone out, you have somebody recording you, and you got some professor that's just programming these young minds with BS, and the adult could stand up and go, yeah, I'm listening to what you're saying. That's just not true. I was there. What you're talking about that happened 20 years, I lived through that. That's not how it was at all. I don't know what you're saying. That's not what I lived through. What planet were you on? Just to give a counter, to teach young minds to have some balls and speak up for themselves and have them hear another point of view in class. It wouldn't take away from the class. It would, and I was uplifting the class and helped to make everybody else smarter because I was sparring with my professors. It made them have to try to back up the things that they were saying. Sometimes they could, and we would just agree to disagree. I'd see their point because it was a personal thing. Other times, I proved them wrong. I wasn't trying to prove them wrong. I was just speaking up saying, what you're saying doesn't ring true for me. Here's why. A lot of times what they were saying was just theoretical nonsense. It wasn't even something that they lived through. It was something that they were taught, and they're just repeating what they were taught. So that's where things have to shift. You have to get people in there that are willing to stand up, and they got to be adults, especially if they're the age or older than the professor. That makes it a lot easier. Makes it a lot easier. Because if I'm in some class and there's some 35-year-old dude in there spewing nonsense, like it'd be, look, son, yeah, everything you're doing, it's just crazy. All right. And then like if I was really pissed, I would already be prepared. You've been teaching for X amount of years. You have this many kids in class. You have this many classes a year. This many thousands of students you've programmed with complete bullshit. And I've just proved you wrong. And I'd like to have that on camera and put that on YouTube or something, because that's what needs to happen. So there's an idea. But the people that are super wealthy, they could fund this. People that are super wealthy could create this program, the Conservatives for Change in college. something like that. And you go there and you interview for it. You write a paper just like you would trying to get into any other college. Here's why I want to be accepted into this program to get this money to survive while I go to college. It would even be good if you couldn't be a kid. It would be good if they focused on, especially veterans. We need more veterans in college. We need more veterans as teachers. We need more people that lived in the real world. If you owned a business and you're burnt out and you say to yourself, gee whiz, I wish I could start something new again. How great would it be if there was a program specifically set up for people who failed in business? That doesn't mean you're a failure. It means other things probably happened, like maybe the economy got screwed up by the last president and you lost everything. Maybe the pandemic stole your business from you, stole all your wealth. How you living now, Whoa, hey, here's this program. You can go to college. Here's the deal. You're actually required to speak up in these classes. And you have to be getting a degree here because that will help with the change later down the road. I think that's a good idea. And that's something I talked about 20 years ago, actively, amongst people. I put it out there on social media at the time, and I didn't have YouTube yet, and as we know, I did YouTube about 12 years ago, but I've only really been focused on it for like the last it was like 3.5 years ago. I got 1,000 subscribers, so it's been about 4 years of me really putting videos out here where I'm trying. Anyhow, that's it. Now I wanted to get that out there. You guys tell me about what you think about that in the comments. I think it's a good idea. I'm done. Have a great day. Be kind to one another. I'll catch you in the next one.